Recently, South Korean government sources have reported that North Korean combat aviation pilots were dispatched to Vladivostok in the Russian Far East in September, preceding the first reported deployments of the country's regular ground units and special forces in early October. The reported deployment has fueled widespread speculation regarding its purpose. The Russian Air Force has for years suffered from significant pilot shortages, with the high tempo of operations in the Ukrainian theater, the expansion of pilot requirements as fighter production has been expanded, and the growing pressure on air defenses from expanding NATO forces across Russian borders, all further increasing this strain. North Korean pilots could help alleviate this, with pilots from elite units operating the country's MiG-23ML and MiG-29 fighters and Su-25 attack jets estimated to have similar training levels to their counterparts in the Russian Air Force. Flying Russian fighter aircraft and attack jets would allow North Korean pilots to gain experience paid for by Russia, while exposing them to relatively little risk and simultaneously helping to bolster a strategic partner against Pyongyang's Western Bloc adversaries. Although even North Korea's newest fighter aircraft are significantly older than the average fighters in the Russian fleet, major efforts have been made to domestically modernize avionics, including installation of glass cockpits and integration of a range of precision-guided weapons. This could help to significantly reduce required retraining to fly Russian fighters, although the MiG-29 and Su-25 do still play limited roles in the Russian fleet today. There also remains a significant possibility that acquainting North Korean personnel with new classes of Russian aircraft and air-launched guided weapons could pave the way for either of these to be exported to the East Asian state. The possible loopholes which Moscow could seek to exploit in the current UN arms embargo on Pyongyang to facilitate fighter exports were explored in detail by a leading expert on North Korean security in January, at a time when Korean ballistic missile sales to Russia were first confirmed. Author of the recent book on North Korean security Surviving the Unipolar Era, North Korea's 35-year standoff with the United States A.B. Abrams highlighted that Moscow had two primary means of providing fighters to North Korea. The first would be to export fighters from classes the country already fields, such as the MiG-29, which it could be claimed were delivered before the embargo, to retain a degree of plausible deniability. Regarding the second, more controversial option, he elaborated. Should North Korea acquire Russian combat aircraft other than MiG-29s, such as the more advanced Su-35 and Su-57 fighters recently inspected by its leader Kim Jong-un on a visit to Russia in September, these could be accompanied by Russian personnel at North Korean bases and presented as operating under a joint Russian-led unit, whatever the reality of the command structures under which they actually function. Such long-range fighters, which are very easily capable of flying across Korea from airfields across the Russian border, could even be deployed between bases in the two countries to further this perception, while retaining duties such as interceptions of American bombers near the peninsula and flyovers during military parades in Pyongyang. Training North Korean pilots in Russia would be a requirement to allow the country to acquire new classes of fighters such as the Su-35 or Su-57, with the training regime potentially occurring in parallel with low-risk combat sorties in the Ukrainian theater. North Korean officials have reportedly shown an interest in such acquisitions in the past. For Russia, such an arrangement would be highly favorable for multiple reasons. A more modern North Korean Air Force would reduce pressure on Russian defenses in the country's Far East in the event of a joint war effort with the Western Bloc in the region, and create greater opportunities for joint operations in the Pacific. A pool of North Korean pilots trained on modern Russian combat jets would also provide the East Asian state with more capacity to lend pilots to the Russian Air Force to help alleviate strain on the fleet. Furthermore, with Russia having increasingly struggled to export fighter aircraft as rival Chinese aircraft offer higher levels of sophistication, North Korea remains a captive market with a very large air force which could sustain export orders that would support Russian industry. Earlier, South Korea's National Intelligence Service, NIS, has reported that North Korea is dispatching 12,000 personnel, including a special forces unit, to support Russia's ongoing war effort in Ukraine. This follows a claim by Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky that Russia is effectively planning to include North Korea in the full-scale war against Ukraine. Western official sources have nevertheless refused to support Ukrainian assertions, with both Kiev and Seoul potentially having much to gain by exaggerating the extent of Pyongyang's support for the Russian war effort as both seek to gain greater Western Bloc support. North Korea has made major arms transfers to Russia from 2022, with Russia in January 2024 confirmed to have begun using Korean ballistic missiles and rocket artillery in the Ukrainian theater. Although a high possibility remains that Korean personnel have been deployed to support the use of complex equipment such as ballistic missile systems, such deployments do not require significant numbers of personnel and occur far behind the front lines. Although statements have been far from conclusive, the possibility of large-scale deployments of North Korean personnel for frontline operations cannot be ruled out. Pyongyang would retain three major incentives for making such deployments, including the ability to increase Russian support for its own economy and defense sector in exchange for support, providing its frontline units with combat experience in one of the most highly contested ground theaters in the world, and setting back its Western adversaries which have made major deployments to the theater.